Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for Coffee Time with Masterminds. Many organizations have been disrupted, and so have their data collection and evaluation plans. Many left wondering what to tell your funders about your program that ended under very different circumstances than you expected. And you're planning for a program that is now run remotely instead of face-to-face. What does this disruption and new way of program delivery mean for your data collection and evaluation plans? Today, we'll be talking about how to revise your evaluation plan for its current circumstance and how to learn from this disruption to be nimble in your data collection and evaluation approach. We invite you to grab a cup of coffee, join the conversation for the next 30 minutes as we discuss topics that are urgent to leaders of mission-based organizations. Let's get started with some introductions. Please tell us your name and what state or country you're from. Join the conversation in the comments by posting your questions. My name's Rebecca Tuttle. I'm the founder and creator of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good. We help schools, nonprofits, organizations, and small businesses find, write, and secure grant funding, and we teach you how to do it. I'm joined today by my co-host, Peta Blakely. Welcome, Peta. How are you today?
I'm great. Good to see you, Rebecca.
Good to see you.
I'm Peta Blakely. I am the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting, and I help mission-based organizations measure and maximize their impact.
Excellent. Our other co-host, Cynthia, of To Your Growth, she is off facilitating a strategic planning session online, so we wish her luck today, and she will be right back with us next Friday, so be sure to tune in. Now, data collection and program evaluation is very complex. It's complex enough without having to make changes to our program service delivery. And on top of that, we're in the middle of an unpredictable pandemic. Peta, what are programs contending with in their data collection efforts?
Yeah, that's right. So there are a few things that are happening. One is simply taking the data collection tools that they would have done in a face-to-face format and collecting that information remotely. And that can look like taking your surveys online or conducting your interviews over the phone or something like that. The other thing that's happening is adjusting your entire data collection plan around a program that's somewhat different now. And so that looks like, how do we account for the fact that the program ran as we had expected until March, and now it's essentially a different program, and we need to ask a different set of questions or record new activities, right? Because maybe now you have distributed technology, or because it's a disaster, you're doing a whole new thing like distributing food. You have to account for that and measure it too.
Absolutely, and that in and of itself can be pretty challenging, especially if online collection is unfamiliar to us and our organization. So what should we be keeping in mind?
So there are essentially three purposes of data collection, and it's important to understand which purpose you're trying to serve here. So one is data for internal planning and program improvement. The second is data that you might report to funders and other allies. And then the third is that there is a structured evaluation process going on that actually has a research question. If you're doing that third thing, you actually have a structured evaluation going on. You need to stop and revisit the question to understand, does this question even apply right now, right? Remember that an evaluation is meant to help somebody understand, do programs like this work? Or is this the best way to implement this kind of model? If your program is now not really generalizable to the thing that you're trying to generalize to, right? Like it's supposed to be an in-class program and now you're doing it online, you might stop and examine. Like, can we actually answer this question right now? Should we even be doing this? And then your options are delay, ask your partners for more time and think about collecting data next year in addition to this year, or revise the question and say, so what about this year's programming can we actually study? If your data is for internal use or for funders and allies, again, you want to have this conversation and say, what is the point of this data? What does it really mean in our organization? And what does it mean right now? Some of those data points might be irrelevant. Butts in seats, not a useful metric right now. And it probably doesn't mean what you thought it meant last year, right? So you might want to revise and count something different or count it at a different point in time. And if you have community members and allies and partner organizations and funders who ask you for this data, call them up and have that conversation with them. Ask them what they do with the data and how best to respond to that question with the information that's available right now.
Absolutely. Tell us more what you mean by allies.
So, allies are all the organizations that your organization is partnering with. That includes your donors, that includes your funders and philanthropic organizations and your corporate partners and the community members that you're accountable to.
I like that, allies. I'm gonna put that in my think tank. Developing quite the think tank here.
Yeah.
So I really like what you said about people in seats maybe isn't relevant right now. I think before we can reconsider how to collect our data and change the collection method, we have to also remind ourselves of why we're collecting that data to begin with.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think at the program level, we tend to get really focused on the data point, and we forget a little bit about the interpretation, right? So when I look at things like an attendance measure, to me, that usually means how well is our program meeting the needs of our clients right now? Because in a lot of cases, people vote with their feet. And if people are getting what they need from your program, they show up, right? So what is a similar measure now? What would it tell us now? What would tell us now that we're meeting the needs of the people that we serve?
I wonder if we change our data collection, would we see more favorable results come out of it, or just different results? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. That is a very interesting question. I think sometimes organizations look at this stuff like it's a test and they're supposed to pass. And I say, remember when you were in school, the test wasn't meant to be so that you got a grade, right? The test was meant to be, or at least this is how I interpreted it when I was a teacher. The test is a test of how well I have taught the material, right? And it reflects on me as the provider of the material. Same with an organization. I find like sometimes organizations are trying to get results that make them look good. And I say, well, what's the point of that? How are you going to get better then? If your data collection isn't helping you expose the opportunities for improvement, then maybe it's not worth the time, right? So I think there's this real opportunity right now to engage in some very nimble data collection about, are the ways that we're showing up for our community right now working and appropriate? And, think not year-long arcs, but day-to-day arcs. What do people need right this second in the community that I serve? And that kind of surveying, which does not require sophisticated tools, that can be as simple as we put a poster up in our window, and we ask people to mark an option that they would like. We put a QR code on a poster that leads people to a 2-question survey.
We've done that before.
Yeah.
And that's kind of fun. It's interactive, at least for the time that you're scanning it. Hopefully you have the app downloaded first, or it takes forever.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We couldn't be having this conversation at a more ideal time. We're closing in on the end of the second quarter, which is why I'm following up my 8 days of outreach, which covers a lot of what we were just talking about, with 52 days of fund development, so that we can go into the end of this quarter close it up, and then start afresh and start off on the right foot when we go into the second half of the year. This is a time where many funders are requesting mid-year reports from us, and we have to come to rely on their support in certain ways. We have to begin to think differently about how we support and sustain our programs. But also, given that we're measuring our impact in so many different ways, let's consider this. If we're offering our programs in ways that have drastically altered our evaluative and performance measures, how then do we report our outcomes to funders? And further, will funders accept these new measures, or will they require us to provide what we said we would upon funding? Mouthful.
Yeah, I hope not. I think not. I think the funders are in the same world that we are, right? And they know what's going on. They know that you are going to have a hard time finding people to collect data from, right? They understand the reality of the situation, and they understand in a lot of cases, programs didn't have a lot of warning before they started meeting face-to-face. I think they get it. And the most important thing to do is reach out to those funders and have a conversation with them and say, what's the best thing we can do in the given circumstance, right? And they will very well say, let's pare this down, simplify it, we understand. Yeah, they also understand that your organization is now stressed in different ways, right? Trying to deliver different services, the staff is working differently, they get it. The same things are happening for them. The other thing to keep in mind is, in a lot of cases, your funders didn't just make up these data collection efforts to make work for you. They didn't print the money that they sent you, right? They're accountable to somebody, right? They also have donors or government agencies or Congress that they're going to be reporting to, and they need to say something. And what they want to do is make the case that they are driving the kind of change that they want to see in the world with the money that they're distributing. So how can you partner with them to help them make that case right now?
I like what you said about funder communication and how important that is. Sometimes as grantees, we shy away from funder communication because we're intimidated, we don't know what to say, maybe we're unprepared. That's why it's really important to script out your conversation. Just be prepared with that conversation. It could go in any direction. You don't have to verbatim the conversation, but paying close attention to what they're putting out there for notifications, because they are notifying their grantees. A lot of funders are notifying the community and putting out permissions to modify your program outcomes just in response to this pandemic. The leniencies that they're allowing us, I've not really seen some of them in my entire career. It's pretty remarkable. And as we adapt to the COVID-19 with performance delivery, and we're demonstrating that benefit and impact that we're trying to make in our communities, we have to be paying attention to what the funders are asking of us and what they're requiring of us. And the only way to really know that is through communication.
Right. Yep. And this is, again, one of those opportunities to strip away extra stuff and focus on your organizational priorities and mission, right? So what does your mission tell you is the most important thing to do right now, right? That's what you need to be doing. There are, the reason logic models are arranged from left to right is that there are some things that need to be happening in your program before you can deliver the outcomes that are meant to happen from your program. So right now is the time to pay attention to those first couple of cells, right? The activities and the quality measures. Let's try to pay attention to that, right? And let's pare way down and say, what inputs do we have to replace because they don't exist in our environment anymore? Or what do the participants need to be able to access our services right now? And maybe we're going to have to strip back to that. And then go back to your funders and make an argument that's grounded in your mission and your vision and your values and your logic model and say, this is what we're going to do. And here's how we think we can measure it. And measuring it can literally mean I counted the people who got box lunches today. That's a measure.
Right, right.
Yeah. So,
And it's interesting you say strip back or pull back some of the unnecessaries. A lot of times organizations will spend out the rest of their funding as they get closer to the end of the year because they're afraid of losing it next year, not being awarded that much next year. Stripping out those activities that aren't productive right now as we go through this pandemic and even post-COVID, organizations have to really consider, is it right? Is it helpful for our community to keep those things hanging on? If you do let them go, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to let them go forever, but don't hold on to things out of fear.
And that's, I think, why it's so important to document these decisions as you're making them. I know that feels like an extra piece of work or exercise, but they're not the changes that you're making right now are not going to go away on their own. They become part of the organizational procedure. And so you want to understand, like, what decisions did we make during this time period that might have served us well right now that aren't going to serve us well going forward? And if you haven't documented why you made alterations, they're just going to hang around, right?
And these alterations and documentation and policy, it doesn't just apply to a pandemic. It could be a hurricane, it could be a storm, it could be a tornado, right? It could
be a recession, right?
It could be a recession, right?
It could be a policy change, absolutely.
Yep. Now, I'm sure some programs have some questions about how their adaptations went. Should they add those to their year-end evaluation?
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. It depends. The answer is it depends. So remember that you are in the business of program evaluation, which is different from research. There are ethical differences and there are differences in the ethical requirements. One of the main differences to me between evaluation and research is that in evaluation, we should only be asking the questions that will help us run better programs or serve our communities better. So if you're just curious about a question, you don't have the right to ask it. You actually never have the right to ask it. But if you're asking about how your program adaptations helped or didn't help because you might carry these adaptations forward, or you want to tweak, right? You've done some things and you're going to make changes in the next few weeks and months, and you want to understand how effective you've been and what you should do better, then by all means, you can add a couple of questions to your year-end evaluations and things like that.
That's great. I see we have Renee with us. Renee from Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome, Renee. Renee comes with us every week, so it's really nice to have you back.
Yep.
This can be really complicated. Peter, how can people get in touch with you to better prepare their organizations for these pressing challenges?
So join my Facebook group, Data Informed Programs. And if you ask questions in that group, I will respond quickly. Or you can use that to get in touch with me and set up a mini consultancy if you want me to drop in on your staff meeting or something like that. We can do that. So that's the easiest way to find me. That's
terrific. That's terrific. Thank you, Peter. And it's up on the screen for you if you want to join. I highly encourage you. Peter really knows her stuff. No, I'm not even kidding. She's very helpful. Concretely, what are the things that people are doing to conduct their data collection remotely?
So I think happily this is the end of paper surveys. So one of the things people are doing is taking their surveys online, and using tools like SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics to distribute their surveys electronically. That's usually better I think it's better in terms of privacy and data management. But you want to consider equity issues. As always, consider, does everybody have the capacity, right, to fill in this tool the way I've distributed it, which, is going to mean having it translated, making sure that it works on phones as well as computers, that kind of thing. Some organizations have been taking data collection like focus groups online. And again, like the equity issues and the access issues are really central. If you expect that everybody in that focus group is going to have high-speed internet and a camera and
Right.
a quiet and private place to participate, then you can probably take your focus group online. Otherwise, if all of those conditions aren't met, then I would say you probably just want to do one-on-one phone interviews instead. And this might be the time to abandon that. Think hard about whether your participants really have time to get interviewed right now, and whether your staff really has time to interview them, or code or analyze those results. So you might want to take a half-hour or hour-long focus group and cut it way back to 10 or 15 minutes, depending on the situation of the people you're going to be calling. Keep in mind that you still have to make it work for them, given all the other things that are going on.
Flexibility with our allies, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's flexibility, and again, paring down and remembering the ethics of the situation. Remember that your program participants don't owe you anything.
That's a good point. That's a great point. You should say that again. That's a great point.
The participants don't owe you anything,
Right.
and they don't pay for their seat in your program with their personal information.
Ooh,
So if
that's
they don't have time to talk to you, so be it. They just don't have time.
That always came up in case management when we would host programs, or organizations would host programs and people weren't showing up. Well,
Right.
Because you're not offering them at a time that's convenient for the user,
Right.
or the participant. It's making those modifications. I really am curious to see some of the data that comes out of this COVID pandemic. It's really going to shift the delivery of service. It's really going to shift a lot of the way that nonprofits and organizations, even businesses, have functioned. The data
really is. And I think on the one hand, the opportunity to increase equity is fantastic. The ability for people with health issues or mobility impairments to get to programs is so enhanced. I think that that's fantastic. But I think it's also highlighting some of the technology inequality that exists in this country. I've long advocated for programs to do more online, because I think it is an additional burden for a lot of adult program participants to go to your learning program or whatever it is, given job responsibilities and family responsibilities. So I'm glad to see that a lot of programs are letting that go. And I do hope that they run some mini experiments to see what elements of this they want to keep going forward.
That's great. I like that mini experiment. And that way you're testing things out to see if they work before you fully commit to that as another measure or another evaluation.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason not to test one change at a time. Don't wait till the end of the year. Yeah, right. Yeah. I used to work for a guy who called these little initiatives a Trojan mouse, right? Not an entire horse, just a Trojan mouse. Let's just try this one little thing.
Interesting.
And I really like that analogy. Yeah.
Wow. What a conversation. We have a lot to fill Cynthia in on when she comes back next week.
Yeah. And I can't wait to hear about her 100% remote strategic planning session.
I know. That is going to be great. Now, if you're looking for more guidance on these measures, please reach out to Peta. Join her crew, catch up with her on Facebook. You have her email address. Reach out to her, ask her some of these pressing questions. This is a lot of information to take in, especially if you're a newer organization and you're unfamiliar with data collection or making modifications to go more online or remote, that's kind of my big takeaway for for the morning here.
Yeah.
But Peter, let's close out with your big takeaway.
Yeah, my big takeaway was the funders themselves are uncertain right now, right?
Mhm.
They are offering a lot of leeway because they think that the people nearest the work are the best to judge what to do in a completely unprecedented situation. So this is a really great opportunity to partner with them and drive the change that,
Together.
yeah, exactly, that we want to see in our communities.
Absolutely. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's great to have you here with us too, Renee. Be sure to catch the recaps on our YouTube channels and tune in every Friday morning at 10:30 live for Coffee Time with Mastermind. We'll see you later.
Have a great day.